Shambo. Welcome everyone. I'm Pipa. I have a YouTube channel to get clarity on who I am. You can see me doing this. You can observe how I fail and stand up again. And hopefully you can learn something from this, or I don't know, relate, feel. I'm aware of the fact that I invite a lot of pain and suffering into my life and regard this as spiritual process. And I don't know if it actually is helpful to me. But I've observed this dynamic within myself of bringing challenge and inviting a challenge to the self. For example, the first thing that you may have seen on this channel is that I was experimenting with Kali energy a lot, and it is a quite chaotic and angry energy at some times, or at least it brings up the anger that is hidden inside yourself. And I really pushed myself into inviting Kali into me more and more to see how it would burn away structures of the ego. Then the challenge that I have been inviting into my life in the last week was centered around relationships and how I relate to family and old friends that I've been seeing for a long time, and about being self-sufficient. And this came from the conviction that in order to have this YouTube channel, in order to be authentic, I have to be willing to speak the truth everywhere, all the time. So that means also in these contexts with people that are not necessarily spiritual, and that know other stories of me, other versions or sides of me that I grew up with. And it was pretty scary to show this new face that I have been developing while stepping into the world and speaking to camera. It has been there for a long time. The spiritual seed has been planted about 5 or 6 years ago, and ever since it's been growing. But since I was in India this summer in Isha Yoga Center, and I spent a lot of time at Dhyanalinga. I have a picture of Dhyanalinga here. Very beautiful. Since I spent a lot of time there, it's just been taking over my life more and more. And essentially spirituality and life are the same thing, or you cannot really disconnect them. So if you say you're a spiritual person or on a spiritual path, that entails that every single aspect of your life is moving into the direction of enlightenment. And there's a lot of resistance in ourselves to this, and that is why I tend to challenge myself. So when I understand that certain things would benefit me, or that certain things would be a step into the direction of a larger awakening, I tend to take the step before I resolve my resistance to it, and then it brings up a lot of emotion, and it sways me out of balance. And I then also realized that the idea of taking a step towards enlightenment in a specific way is also just an idea or a construct. And the point that I always return to is that essentially all you can do is trust yourself. And this challenging yourself into facing situations, developing new ways of presenting to people, um, even things like fasting or sleep patterns or whatever you can do to deepen your spiritual experience or to open up to more insight and more depth. It works, and at the same time it doesn't. um, and someone said something about the middle way or the middle path in the comments. And I don't think we should search for something that is always balanced and that never explores the outer edges. I don't think that is what is meant by walking the middle path. It has something to do with being able to go into both outer edges of the spectrum. So I feel this is getting very abstract, so let me apply it to my own experience and recent experience over this week. So in the weekend I spent time at my elderly house with my family. I didn't see my mom, but I did see my father and brother and sister, and I told them that I started a YouTube channel, that enlightenment is important to me, or is the goal, that I understand that it's inevitable, that I am moving towards it, and that I'm willing to go with that movement, and that I basically said I would do anything, which pretty much I think scared them mostly and made them worried about my well-being, and made them worried about what exactly I meant by I'm willing to go all the way. My sister thought that maybe I would commit suicide, or that I was gonna cut all cords with my family, that I would leave them and never speak to them again. And it's funny because at that time I was also considering this. It never became an actual urge to do anything, but that was the challenge that I had invited into myself. Like, what if I actually am completely alone, and what if I don't keep in touch with these people, and they mean a lot to me. I love them and I really want to have them in my life, but it's a way of bringing in a different perspective and observing how that awakens so much turmoil in yourself, to actually consider this. Like, what if family is not important? What if it's just people whom you grew up with and with whom you share a lot of mind matter, if I can call it that way. So your family is a big karmic trap in some ways, or it's not a trap. It's also an opportunity, but you take over so many patterns, and pretty much everything you learn in your young years is learned based upon this family dynamic. So a lot of what you perceive of as yourself, or a lot of unconscious stuff, especially, is anchored in this family structure. And as I said in an earlier video, that is why monks, for example, in India, they become brahmachari and they enter into monkhood. They renounce all these family relations, and they take on a new name, and they start a new life to really separate them uh, and distinguish themselves clearly from this past version of self, and to not let it dictate anymore what they are going to be into the future. And so that is what I experimented with for myself, mostly as a thought experiment. But thought has impact, and it if you take it seriously, if you really adopt a belief or adopt a perspective, then it inevitably moves into your reality. So if you really make it your own, then you will start emoting according to this. Like your emotions will resonate with it, and your actions will resonate with it, and then your reality will be shaped accordingly. So I understood that this was also a risky thing to do, or it is always a risky thing to do, to experiment with perspectives. Risky in the sense that you will have to be willing to surrender to whatever happens and to face the emotions that come up, to take the actions that accord to this perspective, and to let your reality catch up with it. And if a certain perspective isn't authentic to you, and you face extreme amounts of resistance that you don't do anything with, or that you don't allow to dissolve, then the perspective will not manifest. So it's not like you can't get out of it. But why exactly am I saying this? I'm saying it because I think it's an interesting way to experiment with life, to try and adopt new beliefs, and to thereby see what it is that you, as an individual, or, well, as a mind, as a body, as an emotion, as a karmic structure, what you are still. Like, what is it? What are the things that are moving inside of you? What are the thought patterns? What are the emotional relations or responses that you have to anything and everything in the world? And by adopting new perspectives and taking new kinds of actions, you can very clearly see this, and you can clearly see what arises, and that offers you the opportunity to be with it and to try to understand it, to understand where it comes from. And then also, if you wish to take a step back from that part of yourself, not meaning to say that you pull away from it or run away from it or distance yourself from it by denying that it exists, or by judging it, or by not wanting it to be there. But just understanding that, okay, temporarily in this very moment, I observe that this is the pattern that is active within me, and that this is how I, for example, am in my family relations, and that it hurts my heart to try and push these people away, but that it also hurts my heart to be inauthentic with them. So how can we create resolve in this situation? How can I be completely honest about what it is that I am, what it is that I am experiencing, how I think of them, and feel about them? And does this require that I somehow break the relationship to let it re-evolve, or can we just be with it? I lost my train of thought, which is very interesting. So then the second aspect that comes into this is that it's an opportunity to grant yourself compassion and to love all the parts of you that are attached through things and people, and to observe where the pain is. And again, to apply this to my personal experience, after dealing with this idea or movement into sovereignty and experimenting with what I am on my own, separate from family relations, if I keep them out of my being for a while, or I take a step back and I look at them and I understand that that is not me, then also this other part comes into play, that is kind of the opposing force to it, that that is entirely entangled in family relationship, and that doesn't want to move away from it, and that feels safe in there and that thinks it's a terrible idea to deconstruct them, and that is very fearful. And it's just as true as the part of me that wants to be sovereign. It might be easy to think that disconnection or the wish to be sovereign and to stand in yourself and to understand the deeper layers of self, irrespective of the superficial layers or identities, that this is the spiritual urge, and then the attachment to the persona that I am based upon all the things that I relate to and identify with, that this is the less spiritual, or the thing that needs to move and evolve. And yet, by doing this experiment and seeing what it brings, I also understand that in the urge to be sovereign and to detach and to deepen spiritual process and to move towards enlightenment, or all these ideas, that they're just as nonsense as believing that your family is the only thing that will ever keep you safe and that you can't go without them. So the middle path is just about the willingness to experience these two extremes that are both not eternal truths, but just ways of walking life. And what it mainly teaches you is that there is no clear way to do it, and that you can't walk anyone else's path, and that you always have to stay in touch with what is happening inside of you. And at some point, that may mean that you have to let go of certain relationships, and that they are no longer relevant to the movement that you are in the world, and that they just drain energy. And either you change the way the relationship works, or you don't need it anymore. Sometimes that might be the case, and then you walk that path and you take that action, and the heartbreak that comes up, you be with it, and you will eventually process it, and then you have made the move into that reality where this relationship is no longer relevant and there is new space for new things. Sometimes it might be that you need the exact opposite, which is to recognize that you are in deep need for connection, and that even if there is a lot of pain involved in relating to others, that is exactly what you need to try to do. And that moving away or stepping into sovereignty can also be a way of avoiding other kinds of resistance that you have. And intimacy and authenticity are very related. And it's easy to be authentic when you don't relate to people, because then there is no responsibility and there is no actual exchange happening. And you only take yourself as yourself, and you can then go into the deeper consciousness that is below the surface. But how to find this and express this while being with someone, and even while being with someone that you completely don't understand, and still accepting to, or be willing to be with them and see them and try to understand them and try to move into them and into their deeper consciousness instead of yours only. That is also a very deeply spiritual experience. So there is no way. There is no way. There is always only whatever is happening in this very moment. And trust that you can do whatever you feel called to. You can wreak some havoc or cause some turmoil and chaos by taking actions that stir up the mud and then see what the mud is. Or you can completely surrender to your attachments, or to your deepest desires or your deepest pains. And you'll probably have intuitions on what to do in situations. And consistency is a trap. Discipline and consistency work sometimes. They can work sometimes to help you have a healthy body, have a healthy mind by meditating, working out, and disciplining yourself into certain patterns in life. But if you have any internal resistance to them, or you do these things to run away because you think the way you are isn't good enough in itself, or the pain you're in is something you need to get out of by training your mind and training your emotion and training your body to not experience it and to feel good and to feel light, then something's off. So that's what I mean by it's a trap. It's not always the right thing to do. And the right thing to do doesn't exist because there is no way, and it's only feeling into what is happening and being with the situation of yourself, the world, and feeling what it needs. And you can then do this consciously or unconsciously. And you're always doing it both consciously and unconsciously. That's just the way you work. And the way I work. So today I accepted that there's not much to do. And the sun is out. So I think I will just be outside a bit. And Shambhu.